Welcome everyone to our next webinar. This is our 215th webinar since we started, and this one is going to be one that I've been looking forward to for a while. We have a guest here, Ray Phillips. Hi, Ray. Thanks for coming. Thanks for joining us again.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely, Ray has joined us a number of times in the past. Most of them have been a little bit different than this one, which he comes on and talks and shares with us some nice detailed technical things that he's trying out and using in his business that he where he coaches folks and helps set up helps set up profiles and other things, and this one's going to be a little bit different. We'll talk about that other piece as well, but Ray's going to share his 24-hour Daytona experience as a performance engineer at the recent event down there in Daytona. Looking forward to hearing his story about that. It's always kind of cool where he has a lot of knowledge of what a lot of us are, is either amateur or low-level pro folks in the data world and doing what we do, and he's stepped up to that to a professional program like Risi, and going to be able to share a little bit of what he was able to do, learn, try, and some other things. So it'll be kind of fun. We're looking forward to it. Ray, tell us a little bit about yourself. Maybe talk a little bit about the pictures here, and give us a little bit of a background of being a 10-time AIM Sports Learn Fast webinar host. The most important piece on there, right? Exactly. No, go
That's
ahead. Tell
right.
us a little bit about yourself.
Well, basically, I live data, I live racing. So that's the main thing. Never stop thinking about it. But yeah, I started precision driving analytics in 2015. Had a very different career before this, but I did race as a hobby for almost 20 years, mainly actually all open wheel stuff. And yeah, I just work with a number of different people, number of different teams. So, with always the objective of helping the drivers go faster, however I can do that, whether that's setup or coaching or whatever. So, as far as the pictures, the one on the left there is a Supra that I was the performance engineer for that team last year in SRO. One in the center is the Risi car in red there in the center. They were taking the official Daytona photograph there. And the last one is me looking at all the screens and everything, live telemetry, sitting in the pit box, at Daytona.
Asking
So,
yourself, what in the world did I get myself into here, right?
yeah.
No, pretty impressive, pretty cool. Let's thanks for letting everybody know a little bit more about you. But the main thing, and one of the things that as we chatted about getting started, is there are a bunch of different roles that when we're in positions like myself and having a family car, we may not call them all these things, but it's up to one person to do all these things, right? But when you have a 24-hour race in a professional outfit, there are some different roles that are out there. Maybe you can spend a little bit of time and talk about the different roles that Risi uses, and where you fit into that big picture as you were getting ready to run this big event.
Yeah, so, I was the performance engineer. But I get called a data engineer quite a bit. So for Risi, their data engineer does all the electronics and logging systems, and he ensures that all the channels and the telemetry and everything's functioning. He manages the data download, the integrity and the availability of everything. And he also kind of monitors the fuel and the energy usage. And we'll talk a little bit more about energy in a little bit. Um, I'm going to skip over mine and go right to the race engineer. I'll come back to mine, but the race engineer is kind of the lead engineer. He's the one that is the primary interface with the driver. He owns all the setup decisions and strategy, uh, balances performance, drivability, constraints, and makes real-time calls during the sessions and the races. So he's the one that, we're all kind of feeding information to. So as a performance engineer, my main job is to feed the race engineer information. So this is kind of a different role for me because I'm in like one lane, which is, to really study the data, identify any performance limitations. Um, I develop KPIs, we'll talk a little bit more about those, but those are key performance indicators and correlation models. Those help me develop the KPIs. Um, and it's important for me to separate driver effects from car effects. Um, with these drivers, I didn't really have to worry about driver effects too much. They're three Ferrari factory drivers, so they kind of knew what they were doing. Certainly, I'm not going to coach them. Um, but it's important to evaluate everything objectively and not let extraneous stuff get in the way. So it's kind of worked out.
Okay, let's see. There we go.
So preparation. So I found out I was getting this job. I think the third week in December, somewhere around there. Um, from that point to the start of the roar, I prepared. So it ended up being about 3 weeks, which I say at the bottom there. But so some of the things that I did was, study the Ferrari manual on the 296 GT3. That manual is 710 pages. So obviously a lot of it I didn't have to worry about, but you kind of need to go through everything and pick out what you do need to worry about. Um, so there's lots of tables and things like that that can be used, like, the stiffness of the sway bars at different angles and bump rubbers and aero charts and, just kind of goes on and on. But there's also like the traction control settings. This particular car has three different knobs and then, many different adjustments on each knob. So, um, understanding how that works and trying to figure out if there's some benefit to different settings, like as the tires wear, is important. ABS settings, same thing. There's, throttle maps and, engine maps. There's all sorts of things on these cars. They're very complicated. Maybe not like a F1 car, but seems pretty complicated to, what I race, which was a Formula V initially. Um, and basically, you got to build as much as possible in the software prior to the event. More information means more calculations. So, you're trying to come up with some sort of a competitive advantage. And if I can do something better than the team next to us, then that's going to pay dividends. You also got to understand the rules. So reading the rules and especially paying attention to anything that's performance related. And I'll watch any videos that I think might provide information that I can use. So maybe parts of a prior year 24-hour race or, other races that Risi competed in, anything that I think can help, I'll try to do that. So,
And you mentioned there at the bottom, you already mentioned it, but you prepared from the
yeah.
end of December to the beginning of the roar after figuring out you finding out you had this job. I wonder how much sleep you actually got, right? And when you this is a lot of information to go over in a short amount of time, 3 weeks. Holy cow!
Yeah. Well, I would have continued if the roar didn't start. So,
You had 3 weeks. That's the only reason you prepped for 3 weeks, right? If you had
yeah,
five, you would have done five, right? Yeah,
that's
there you
right.
go.
I kept doing more stuff when I was down there.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, the roar is 3 days of testing. But when you come into a team, you can't just come in there, like a bull in a china shop. You have to kind of, get used to who the team members are. Nobody knows who I am. So, I got to meet the drivers, the rest of the team, and just learn, everyone's role and what they have to offer. In addition, there's all these other engineers that aren't with the team, but are from Ferrari slash Orica. Orica builds the cars, and they've got all their own stuff that they're working with, but they're in the meetings, when we're talking about setup and things like that, um, and everybody's speaking Italian or Portuguese except for me. So yeah, I don't know if they're talking about me, but if they are, it's probably good that I don't
Those
know.
those soft skills of people skills that you have are must really come into a benefit when you jump in with somebody that the whole team has been around a while, and you have to find your way in. Yeah, so yeah,
Yeah,
there's other skills other than reading a computer screen, obviously, right?
yeah, yeah, that's for sure. So when the car's on track, basically the race engineer and the crew chief work together. So Um, when we're sitting at the screens, basically all the engineers are on intercom, so we can just talk freely with each other. And then to talk to like the crew chief or somebody else, the radio button needs to be used. Um, but this allows us to, like I said, just talk freely. So if I see something, I can just tell, Rick, the race engineer, hey, this is something to pay attention to. Um, but Rick, the race engineer, feeds information to the crew chief, and the crew chief makes sure that all the crew guys do what needs to be done. So when the car comes in, before the car hits pit lane, we've decided on what setup change we're going to and make that change, send the car back out, and all of us are really watching live telemetry. So there's certain things I'm looking for as a performance engineer. There's certain things that the tire engineer is looking for, or everybody's got their own thing to kind of pay attention to. Um, so when the car comes in though, data is downloaded and then that data is given to me and I start analyzing it. I can do a little more with the data itself than with the telemetry. So I'll be looking at the understeer and oversteer the car has, what the drivers are doing, what they're experiencing, and that'll help us kind of decide what setup change we make next. So yeah, there's no like resting when you're in the pit box, you're there to work, and that's what everybody does. So
On that
um,
team for that event, were the you're listening to the to the person talking to the drivers, during the run, and you're listening to the drivers as well. So you're getting some feedback on what the car is doing or feeling. So you're
yeah.
able to start at least considering what you're going to look at when you get the data probably ahead of time, right?
Yeah, so basically, I'm on the radio. I don't really talk on the radio because that's up to the race engineer. Don't really need to. So, but I'm listening, and then I'm listening to IMSA. So if there's a car involved in an incident or something, I'm hearing that, and then we're talking freely on the intercom. So basically, three different things to pay attention to. Um, and then as we make setup changes, Rick is making notes of the setup changes, and I'm kind of making my own notes. And keeping track of those setup changes is like imperative. I mean, if I'm going back and looking at the data and I'm looking at how the car is handling, if I don't know exactly what the sway bars are, what the springs are, all that stuff, it's not going to help anybody because we're going to make bad decisions at that point. So yeah, it's imperative to know what was on the car when you're looking at that data.
Yeah, bad data in, bad data out, right? If you're not
Right.
doing your job correctly, that would be bad.
Yeah. So yeah, decisions. There's lots of decisions being made. So you want to make good decisions. Um, so basically, my job is to turn the data into decisions. The software doesn't make the car go faster. The decisions do. Um, so yeah, it's really important to know what you're looking at. Um, and lap time is not enough. A lot of people really focus on lap time, but in pro racing, that's not really the case. You're more focused on individual corners, what the car is doing there. If you make a setup change, where does it help? Where does it hurt? Because there is no perfect setup. Um, what do the drivers like? What do they not like? Um, so, so yeah, all the lap time does is it tells you what happened. It doesn't tell you why it happened. Um, and again, got to separate driver influence from car influence. Um, we did have one driver that was probably inducing a little bit more understeer than the others. So that was something I was paying attention to. Um, and basically what I did to try to kind of get him to know about it is I just did a report on understeer through different corners for all three drivers and just gave that report. And let them look at it.
How did you
So
do that typically in that world? Were they just looking at the screen with you, or would you do a quick printout and make 3 copies and hand them out?
I basically sent them a spreadsheet, or PDF, I think
Oh, okay.
it was. I did it in a spreadsheet, but then gave them a PDF. Um, and it just real simple, because like I said, I don't need to coach these guys.
Right.
So,
Give them the
uh,
information though that they need to coach themselves
yeah,
as much as anything.
yeah, exactly, Um, and you need to separate mechanical influence from aero influence. So, um, I calculate both mechanical balance and aero balance. Um, so, mechanical balance may not be a term that a lot of people have heard. So, basically, it's comparing the stiffness of the front to the rear, Um, so if there's no like bump rubbers or anything, that mechanical balance number stays the same. But if the car gets into a bump rubber, then that changes because now you've got extra stiffness added to the equation. Um, so yeah, that's real important because at Daytona, 3, 5, 6, they're all, mechanical influence corners. They're slow speed, they're not really high speed. Um, Aero balance is going to come into play in the kink and the bus stop. Um, and then it's about top speed, right? So um, Daytona is actually, I guess, going into turn one, aero comes into play there. But besides, just driving flat out, aero really doesn't come into play a lot at Daytona. You want the highest top speed. But as far as aero balance, how the car is handling through there is not a lot to do about it.
Yeah, you spend a lot of
Um,
time at high speed on that particular track, right? So top speed
yeah,
is a number that you're be concerned about.
yeah. But you're not cornering at high speed. That's the
Right.
difference.
There you go.
So, and every setup change is really just an experiment. Um, you have an expected result, and basically that's your hypothesis. This is what I expect to happen when I make the setup change. Doesn't always go that way. And you may think that the driver likes it, but the driver doesn't like it. Um, so there's nothing saying that a setup change is concrete, that this is what's exactly going to happen when you make the setup change. You Hopefully most of the time you're going in the right direction, but there's definitely more than once where we made a setup change and thought it was going to be the best thing, and driver didn't really like it that much. So if the driver doesn't like it, it's not worth having it on the car. Um,
It's really,
so
really the rubber meets the road with the driver, right? If it doesn't work, it doesn't work, right? Even if he's wrong, maybe a little bit. But the Kyle put a question up there that you kind of touched on already a little bit, but it was on this decision page, so I thought I would jump in here. But can you see the car losing performance live? You're looking at telemetry and suggest a workaround. Ray already mentioned that he doesn't actually talk to the drivers at all. But when you see something like that and you're on the intercom talking back and forth, does that information get to the right person and then they on that particular team there, would they start to suggest some things in real time, or would you wait until you came in?
no, we would suggest it real time. On the SRO team last year, we did that probably more. But yeah, I mean, if there's something that we can tell the driver to help him on the track, then we'll definitely do that.
Put Give them the option of, hey, hey, this is what we're seeing. Like you mentioned, they're professional drivers and they're all really good, but the
Yeah,
information is information, right? Let them. They're
right.
pretty busy out there, so giving them
Yeah,
another thing to try is maybe something that helps. So
right. Yeah, I see Kyle asked about bronze driver. These are all three drivers were platinum drivers. I believe two of them won Le Mans twice. They've driven 499 and they've done a lot. They're Ferrari factory drivers. So no, this is GTD Pro, no bronze in there. So
and they spoke
um,
their English was good enough for you to communicate
yeah,
really quite well.
yeah. I mean, one of the drivers is actually Brazilian,
Oh,
a guy named Daniel Serra, and so he drives Brazilian stock cars a lot.
ah,
But the stock cars down there are apparently not like our stock cars per se. They're kind of a cross between a stock car and a GT3 car, if I understand it correctly. Um, but yeah, all really, really good drivers. So um, yeah, it's basically just giving them the data and let them run with it, you know.
It may be a little bit personalized here, but with these three drivers, had they raced endurance before, or were they a group
Oh
that
yeah.
often typically runs together, or are they just Ferrari drivers that they happen to come together for this one car?
No, so when Risi won the 24 hours of Daytona in 24, they had these three drivers plus James Colato. So they've already won the 24 hours of Daytona,
They've been
you know.
around each other for a lot. They understand each other
Yeah.
really well.
Yeah. They get along really well. Um,
Perfect.
getting back to setups, a great way to verify setup is to go back to the original one. So it's basically ABA, you know, because you want to make sure that what you've changed is actually what you think it is, you know. So if you go back to the original one and the car is behaving the same way it was before, then you know you made the right change. Um, so yeah, I mean, there's a lot to it, you know. So
Yeah, and not much. And as you mentioned, that with three drivers on top of it, not a ton of time, right? I mean, you're having to
no,
get everybody some time, and you're having to do all these adjustments and work stuff out with a lot of cars out on the track, I suppose, as well, right?
yeah.
Always busy out there.
Yeah, and the thing is you want to make sure the setup change that's made works for everybody. So um all these drivers gave good feedback. So it didn't really matter which one, we started with. But if we made a number of setup changes, we wanted to get the other two in that car and let them feel it and get their feedback as well. Because you want everybody to be as happy as possible. Yeah. The best setup is the one that gives the driver the most confidence. So.
Comfort, yep, comfort. Okay, key performance indicators. You mentioned this earlier, and I think it's kind of a cool way of thinking about it. Explain what you mean by this.
Key performance indicators or key KPIs. So basically, they're just a quick way to understand if a change made a difference. So it kind of helps you because you don't need to study the traces or scatter plots or graphs. Basically, you just put the KPIs in a channels report, you know. Um, so for setup type stuff, you always want to separate corner entry, middle, and exit because you need to know what the car is doing in each phase in order to make the right decision as in regards to the setup. So one thing I look at is basically I look at where the weight is. So if the car is coming out of the corner and it's understeering, I'm probably going to suggest making a setup change to the rear of the car because that's where the weight is. So if it's understeering going in, so the entry phase, then I'll probably do the front of the car, like a softer sway bar in the front. Um, or sometimes the track has a lot of grip and a softer bar won't help in the front. You actually need to go stiffer because the outside tire starts to fall over if it's too soft. Um, so you need to know where the car is in the corner in order to make that decision. Um, and middle is kind of the hardest part because you have to really look to see, all right, is the driver still on the brakes or is he coasting? Is he on throttle? What's the car doing? What's the driver doing in that middle phase? Um, and that's where the sway bars really come into play too, is in the middle phase. Um, so yeah, that's really, really important. So I come up with KPIs that like the average understeer, corner entry, middle and exit, and look at max and min as well. Because basically the min is going to be oversteer, max is going to be understeer, and the average is both.
You're using the term understeer quite a bit there, and I was about ready to ask the question about that, but just a negative understeer is an oversteer, then I take it, right?
Yes,
Gotcha.
yes,
So,
that's correct.
okay.
Um, so yeah, that's really, really important. But there's other things you can look at as well. You can look at like distance or time that an event happens. So you can do distance coasting. So um, if one driver is coasting a little bit more to the apex. And in that phase, I don't think coasting is bad, by the way, because it's still kind of the trail braking phase of the corner of the car is still slowing down. So if the driver realizes that the car is pointed to the apex, but they're already off the brake pedal, then they're not going to go to throttle until that apex. Um, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But if one driver is say coasting a little bit more than another, and the one that's coasting is actually a little faster, then that's something to pay attention to. If that's something consistent, then that's a KPI that needs to be watched. Um, and then, time from brake release to full throttle, things like that all come into play. You can also count different things like steering corrections or the number of lifts off the throttle after initial throttle application. Um, that lifting off the throttle after initial throttle application is one I really pay attention to. Because if a driver is wanting to go to throttle and then they have to lift, it pretty much tells you they went to throttle too early. Um, and there's something causing that lift. And whether they know it or not, something is causing them to lift. And if it's because the car's understeering and they need to transfer weight to the front to solve that, then maybe that's a step change we can make, you know?
It's
Um,
Ray. A couple of webinars that Ray joined us a while back. Some of you've been around for a while may remember that Ray did a webinar that basically set up your AIM software in order to count some of these these number of events. Whether it be throttle, the throttle that he was just talking about. If you went on and had to come back out, how many times did you have to do that per lap or per segment, or what? Any ways you wanted to do that. So Ray's using some of the same stuff that he shared here in the past, and it's very very valuable. The one comment that I saw a little bit ago that I thought was kind of interesting, since we're talking about these KPIs and talking about the different drivers doing different things. Kyle mentions that you know helping the other drivers and all that. Seems like the data guy would seems what you're doing would be a bit daunting, working with drivers of that level and then working with such small things. Obviously, that is a little bit true, but it is the same as working with other drivers as well, right? These guys are just very very good at it. You still are doing the same basic thing, which is finding some differences, finding which one's working better, sharing that information with them, and let them adjust to what they think will work best, right?
yeah, exactly. What I do with these KPIs, I mean, I probably have, I don't know, 50, something like that. And I just put them all in a channels report, choose like a lot of laps that are pretty close in time, no big differences. And then, export the channels report to Excel. And then I can sort it all any way I want, you so that helps me a lot because then I can look at a lot of different things in different
Quickly,
orders.
quickly.
Yeah, very, very, very quickly,
Once your eye is trained to understanding what an 8 versus a 23 or something in that particular area, or even looking at just the differences, boom,
Right.
jumps out at you like crazy, probably, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Let's jump and let's take a little bit of this. Some AIM data. Ray wasn't using AIM data at Daytona, but he's explaining a little bit of what some of the same stuff he was doing there with some AIM information. So give us an idea of what we're looking at here, right?
Yeah, so how you come up with correlations a lot, I mean, sorry, KPIs a lot is with correlations. If if there's a handling issue, something is causing that. So if you can find the correlation between, the root cause, then you can basically solve that handling issue, or at least have a good idea of where to go. Um, so I was at Sebring last weekend. Yeah, I think it was last weekend. So um, working with a team I work with quite a bit, Daniel Jacobs, and they've got a number of Porsches. And I was watching the video of this Cayman, and the thing looked like it was really bouncing around a lot as they do at Sebring.
I was gonna say at Sebring, no, tell me
Yeah,
it's not so.
yeah. But I was really kind of hearing, wheel slip in the rear, the rear tires spinning up, and I'm like, seems a little excessive. Um, and, it seemed to be kind of correlating to the bumps. So I wanted to come up with something in the data that verified what I was thinking, so I just did a scatter plot of uh, vertical acceleration on the y-axis and average rear wheel slip on the x-axis. And the colors are throttle application. So red being 100% throttle. The blue is the car braking. So the dark blue on the right, that's all braking. So all the wheel slip that we're looking at, those are all negative numbers. So the graph on the left was, the data from the video I was watching that made me think about this. And you can see that the driver isn't at full throttle and he's getting quite a bit of wheel slip. So I said, okay, I want to improve how this car is getting over the bumps. So I suggested increasing the rear rebound and the graph on the right is the result. So now you're seeing more full throttle with the same amount of slip, you know. And if you look, the car really isn't bouncing around as much. So, and the driver went faster. So that was a win, and I can see that in the graph, but if I want to make a KPI out of that, then that can be done. So next slide kind of shows what I did there. So it gets a little confusing. I understand when you're looking at these, but basically I use the GPS corner on, excuse me, corner on channel that AIM provides, and said, okay, if the car is in a corner, then let's go further. So, and then if the average rear wheel slip is less than zero because it's all negative, then take the vertical acceleration and divide it by the average wheel slip, but multiply that by the throttle percentage. Okay. And that way I take everything into account that's in that scatter plot, and then I just multiply it by 100 so that it gives me a number that, isn't too small, Um, so down below is the results. And the chart on the left is the blue, and the chart on the right that we were looking at is the red. So if you look at the KPIs, I did a non-zero average. So with the blue, it's 12.182. So that's a higher number. And with the red, it's down to 8.091 with the fast lap. So, and the next two laps are in the eights, and even the 11 above it is lower than the 12. So, um, yeah, I mean, that's a KPI that I could use, if I wanted to.
Yeah, it would not take much understanding of this channel to quickly understand that lower is better, and then you look at this and you go, well, there's zero doubt, right? The change made a positive help, right? And it was better, right? So you
Yeah,
got to a 17 in the midst of that as well. So
right.
interesting.
Yeah. And that was his fastest lap, that, 17.5. So,
Very happy with that then, right?
yeah, he was happy.
Very good, very good. Okay, let's look at the next one, constraints.
Yeah. I'll answer Peter's question first. Yeah, I actually wanted more rebound in the car because it was bouncing so much. I wanted to increase the damping, so slow down basically how quickly the rear tires are
Fall
coming
down.
back down to the pavement. Um, so constraints, there's a lot of constraints. Um, so for the Roar, um, there's 6 sets of tires, but there's like 9 hours of testing time. And a set of tires lasts roughly an hour, maybe a little bit more. So, you've got to be really careful about how you use the tires, you want to make sure all the drivers get in the car for a good amount of time. You want to make sure that when you're making setup changes that the tires aren't like brand new or have 40 laps on them or something like that. So you want to make setup changes when the tires are in the window. Um, You also want to make sure that the tire pressures are at what you're going to have to run, in the race. And like your camber is set to where it needs to be, all that stuff. Um, and all that stuff affects how the tires work too. So,
Was there pretty good life out of the tires? Did they probably fall off obviously from when they're new, but they got a pretty good sweet window there in the window for a while, or
yeah,
they pretty much
no,
slide down?
no, I think they were pretty good.
Okay,
Yeah, I mean, I've worked with a lot of different sets. These were Michelins, and they really didn't seem to fall off very quickly. So it
good.
was it was pretty
Gives you a
good.
little bit of a bigger window to do the work you need to do and correlate it
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. I mean, we had one set of tires. I think we put 45, 50 laps on them, just because, we didn't have anything else.
Yeah,
So we were done with all the tires, so we needed to do that. But anyway, yeah. No, they seem to be pretty good. I
very
think
good.
Michelin did a good job with them. So for the race, there's 24 sets of tires for not just the race, but for three practice sessions, qualifying, and then the race. So, if there's a lot of green laps and all, that's really not enough tires. So you've got to figure out how to make those work. And unfortunately or fortunately, that wasn't a problem in this race for anybody because there was a yellow period, I think, for 7 hours. So, from, I guess, due to fog, all the way from the night to the morning. So I was talking to one driver, that he was in the car for 3 hours behind the pace car. So,
Jeez, a terrible time. You can't let your focus lapse, right? Bad things can happen at 50 miles an hour if you run off and bump into something, or it hurts your race just as much as if you hit something lightly. The
yeah, exactly.
funny part was I was watching the race live, and that went on and on and on and on, right? And I was finally getting here on my end. It was pretty late, in the middle of the night, and I thought I'm going to go take a little bit of a nap. And just about when I was kind of buttoning up, I was working and watching, stuff, and darned if it went green just as I was getting really tired. I was kind of talking myself into taking a nap, and it was like, oh no, okay, I'm back up, back watching.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I turned it on in the morning. We didn't finish the race, by the way. We'll
Yeah,
get to that. But yeah, I turned it on in the morning when I woke up and yeah, they were still under yellow. I'm like,
crazy.
what the heck is going on?
So it happens
So
sometimes. I mean, the fog or rain or whatever. I was a little surprised they kept them running that long instead of putting it under a red. I'm sure they had good
yeah,
reasons for it, but yeah, I was a little surprised.
yeah, I don't understand that myself, but yeah, not
Next thing
not
we're
our
going to talk
call.
about is a balance of performance, something that at that level is a game well played, right?
Yeah, it's I started dealing with balanced performance, I guess, last year with SRO, um, and learned very quickly that it's extremely important, and it's probably even more important in IMSA. Um, it's it does make the cars more equal, so from that perspective, it's great. But the peak performance is capped, for everybody, and there's a thing called energy that limits the strategy basically. And what that is, and I'm not talking about like a hypercar with batteries. I'm talking about a virtual tank of energy that IMSA gives to every manufacturer. And you kind of think of it as fuel, but how they measure it is with torque sensors that every team needs to install on rear axles. So, and by the way, IMSA is getting all our telemetry. They're getting everybody's telemetry live. So they're monitoring everything. And, there's a certain like tire pressure you have to be at and over at an average over a certain period. And if you're not at that average tire pressure, you'll get a penalty. And the way the energy works is they give you a tank of energy for a stint. Okay. And basically, obviously the car is burning a certain amount of energy per lap. So the better the team is at managing that energy usage, the longer they can go, right? And it could be that you've got plenty of fuel, but if you're going to be running out of energy, you've got to pit because if you don't, you're going to get a penalty, you know? And when the car does come into the pits and gets fueled, when the fueler plugs into the car, there's a switch that gets flipped basically, and that refills the energy tank at a certain limit that again IMSA dictates through BOP. So yeah, the BOP consists of a lot of different things, but I this is and the energy one is one that I've got to learn a little bit more about, to be honest, as far as seeing how we can use that to our advantage.
I remember watching
Um,
a little bit last year, and then this year they had it on all the different classes, but last year it was just on the top class. And I didn't understand it at first, and you and I had a chat a little bit earlier, but it would show this energy level going down, and I just assumed maybe it was, it was a battery, it was the actual fuel level. I didn't understand it fully, but I did notice that when it would get down to 2 or 3%, those cars were pitting every time. And it turns out, like you say, it doesn't matter how much, you can still have 5 gallons of fuel in your car. When that thing
right.
comes down, IMSA rules, you gotta, you better pit, or else you're gonna end up with a drive-through or a multiple minute penalty, right? So it was interesting. I shared on Facebook during the event. I shared a website that actually showed that for all three classes, throttle positions and some other stuff for all of the classes. That was kind of a separate little live timing page that was available. So it was what you're basically a reduced view of what you're seeing there at the track. It was very, very interesting to see, and you could watch the pit stop planning and people trying to save fuel and some other things. It was very interesting to watch.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is that, if a driver is going over, let's say, the bus stop at Daytona, if he's really climbing the curbs and the rear tires are spinning up, but that's not benefiting the car because it's not going forward due to that tire spinning, that's expending energy without a benefit, you know? So that's exactly what you don't want, you know? You want to use all the energy the best way you can. That's propelling the car forward. Um, so yeah, I mean, and I was watching a little bit of the NBC coverage myself, and that was the first time I ever saw energy shown. And there was a battle between, I think 3 or 4 GTD Pro cars, and one of them, the energy was, really low. And I said, oh, that car's gonna have to pit soon. And sure enough, next lap, he pitted, So um, I really think the energy is more important than fuel and tires now. You know.
Yeah,
Um,
Matt mentions here that they had those torque sensors on the axles of all the highest
yeah.
level cars early, and now it's on all of them. I think at first it was looking at maximum output, and they were and they could adjust some things. I know a couple cars that got penalized in the top class, the GTP class, that exceeded that number more
Right.
than they allowed spikes, or they had a formula where it was, but
Yeah.
it exceeded that number, and they made them come down and do a stop and go penalty. And so it was used for that initially, but I think this energy output tank is using that same exact data for that calculation as well. That's my assumption.
Yeah. Now I think that that item you're speaking of, there's a channel called PPU Illegal, and that's basically what you just described. So that changes as a car is going around the track, and there's a maximum that you can't go over. Um, so that's one thing that I haven't messed with. That's all up to the Ferrari and Orica engineers. So the manufacturer engineers are the ones programming the car
Watching
to
that
make
very
sure that
closely,
that
no doubt.
yeah that they stay legal in that regard.
Yeah,
Um,
perfect.
so yeah, I mean the Ferrari Orca engineers are doing things I don't know what they're doing.
Very, very sharp.
So
And as you mentioned that, yeah, you kind of now you drive to this virtual limit, but boy, if you get it all right and and the pit stops are being planned correctly and everybody's doing their job, all of a sudden you've got you got 50 minutes worth of the virtual tank, and you've got 60 minutes of fuel in the car. now it's all out, right? That now you
Yeah,
don't worry about it anymore. That you're all really setting up for some sort of a run, or if there's a yellow in the middle, and you can actually get after it pretty hard for the second half or something, right? So
right.
interesting strategies that are always being changed pretty quickly. It'd be a lot of work.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing you have though is the timing system. I think most teams use HH timing. That's what we were using, and that gives you a lot of information, and it gives you a lot of information about your competitors. So now you can see the energy usage of your competitors, um, and when drivers are pitting and how long their pit stop was, and all kinds of information. It's another thing I got to learn a little bit better.
Very, very
But
high
yeah,
tech. Very, very high
there's
tech.
yeah. So when you're sitting there on the pit box, not only are you watching the telemetry, you're watching the timing, you're watching the cameras, you're listening. Yeah. So there's a lot going on.
Overwhelming,
Uh,
right?
yeah. Um, so yeah, strategy again, that's not my call, but yeah, the race is long. It may not be beneficial in the long run for drivers to push as hard as they can. Especially when it comes to energy usage and things like that. So you have to be smart about how you're going to use or work around these constraints, I'll say, and still do good lap times, to keep you in the hunt.
Strategy becomes a big part of this, obviously.
Right. Yeah.
Perfect. Race day. What is I love the first bullet point there. Race day shows up. My job is done. And
Yeah.
obviously not totally, but probably the heavy lifting is done, right?
Yeah, I mean, really all the calculations and stuff are done. But now I've got to pay attention to everything and the telemetry. And again, work with the timing system. There's many people looking at the timing system and other things. You got the Ferrari Orca engineers in there watching. They're looking for some specific things. I'm looking for some specific things. There's a tire guy looking for, tire pressures and yeah, everybody's got a job to do. So yeah, there's still a lot of pressure. So um, anyway, yeah. Um, and unfortunately, as I mentioned, our race ended early. We kind of got hip checked, I'll call it, at turn two, which put us in the grass, and then the driver just couldn't get the car stopped. You could hear from the in-car video, the ABS working and trying to do everything it could, but it couldn't get stopped until it reached pavement again, which was turn three. And basically, that same car hit us in the left front and broke the steering rack and
Oh
other
no.
stuff. So that's racing. So um, pictures down
One
below. I
question
think.
before you get to the picture.
Okay.
One statement before you get to the bit, since it's race day. Something I had been thinking about. It's a 24-hour race. You're there. You're got this task. You got all these other fellows there that are doing this, very in-depth mental challenge. Was the race engineer and the data engineer and you all scheduled to work that job 24 hours, or was there some other folks that would come in and fit in slightly, or you guys were the three it for the 24-hour period?
Yeah, we were it for the 24-hour
Wow,
period.
wow.
So if there is a benefit, I didn't have to stay up for 36 plus hours. So
You could have done it obviously because once your mind gets working right, it helps.
right.
But that is a lot of concentrating for a long time. You
Yeah.
that next day would be you'd be worn out not only physically but mentally as well.
Right. Yeah. And
Crazy.
I've never done that before, to be honest. That
Yeah.
was going to be my first. So, um, yeah. I'm not sure exactly how I feel about that, but I mean, I would have liked to finish the race,
Yeah.
but
Obviously.
yeah.
Yeah. You
But
get some cool pictures there. What are you showing us about the as we kind of end this one?
so the prancing horse there, that's in a trophy room at Risi Competizione in Houston and their headquarters, and pretty impressive trophies. They won 24 hours Daytona twice, 24 hours Le Mans three times, and lots and lots of trophies. Um, Giuseppe Risi, the owner, has been around for a long, long time. I think he even ran a F1 team for a little bit when he was much younger. If you Google his name, you'll see interviews with him and things like that on YouTube. But I think he told me they had over 360 trophies, and there's just stuff everywhere and tons of cars in the back. And one cool thing that he's got that I saw is he bought a 1978, I believe, 308 uh, from Ferrari, and Enzo Ferrari personally delivered it to him, and that car was in their shop.
Whoa,
Uh,
that's saying something.
yeah. So yeah, he's got a really good relationship with Ferrari, obviously. But so the center picture is basically where I live for most of the time. That's the trailer lounge, and my computer is the one on the right. And it's not very big. It's, when you got three drivers, all the engineers, and everybody else in there, it's pretty cramped. So, um, yeah, but that's where I live for most of the time, which is, not too bad, but yeah.
You know those
Um,
I've been into a lot of lounges like that, where the engineering kind of sits, right? And off on that right-hand side in the middle, those are mirrors to try to make it look a little bit bigger, but really is a that camera's even making it look larger than it is and it looks small, right? So
right, exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
and there you are in the throng.
Yeah, so this is before the race started. This is the fan walk, which I've never experienced before. Um, so basically, before the race starts, they open up the pit lane to all the fans. And that semi truck that's behind me, that's where the drivers go up and get introduced. So basically, you can see all of them lined up on the back of the trailer, and then they would go around the corner and get introduced, walk out. Um, Willpower, I saw him, um, and his team all walked up with these blue wigs. I got a great picture of him in a blue wig. Um, but yeah, I mean, I had Romain Grosjean come walking through our pits, and yeah, you see all types of people there.
Very
So
cool.
pretty neat. Saw a lot of people I knew, including Peter Krause. So
Yeah, there you go. There you go. I was watching some of the Facebook posts and some other things, and I saw that Peter was down there and had said hi to you. So
yeah, yeah, it was cool to see him.
perfect. The oops, that anything else you'd like to add as we kind of go to start wrapping this one up?
No, I don't think so. I'll be happy to answer any questions if anybody's got some.
I think we got through a lot of them as we were going, but if somebody, there's one more there if you want to read that, and we'll let you answer that one here as we after I go through a couple of slides. But personally, I think it's been very intriguing. I appreciate Ray coming on and talking about some of this and giving us a little bit of what working on a pro team kind of feels like. A lot of us haven't done that, so I appreciate that very much. Hey, we're gonna put as soon as we get done with this, I will go to work and I will put together the video for putting it up on YouTube. YouTube, if you go to our site, it's aimdata /aimdata from the YouTube site. You'll find us. If if you're there watching and watch too many of these, make sure you subscribe and you get any links of any new videos we place up there. So that's where we put all of our different videos and different things. So if you go there and take a look back, they've got a pretty darn good search engine there on YouTube. And I work pretty hard at putting all the right codes and the words and all that in the description. So if you are looking for math channels or segments, segment calculations, type that into the go directly to our page there, and then there's a search bar there. Type it in there, and it'll only search our videos. And it's very, very good actually in coming up with the right videos and putting them in order that word would probably fit. So give that a shot if you're looking for it. We have a lot of videos out there, so and a lot of them that are fairly long. So make sure you use that search button; it'll help. Customer support, that's what we do here at AIM Sports, looking to help you in any way that we can. So if you have any questions that you may need to help, since we're really a support company that happens to sell electronics, give us a call. Meet up with us at the track. If you see one of the technicians wandering around, ask them a question. Give them a water. They're working pretty hard out there. Or give us a call. 800-718-9090 is our tech support line. And give us a buzz. Let's make sure we help you get the best and the most out of your software and your hardware. It's important to us. So our next webinar, before we jump back and have Ray close us out with another answer or two, our next webinar is Tuesday 24th, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern here in the States. We're going to talk about the PRI show and the review and update on new products. Robbie will be joining us, who was there at the PRI show, and is going to go over all the new products and maybe a review on some of the ones that have been updated and some other things, and just talk about the show and some of the different hardware and software stuff that was released there. So looking forward to that. Make sure you join us again February 24th, a couple weeks from now, and earlier in the day here in the States. So Ray, what about another great picture of the car there? Kind of a cool shot. Tell us, did you have a question there that you had an answer to?
Yeah. So Kyle, I didn't have to do that, thankfully. So I didn't have to set all that stuff up. That was kind of the data engineer, though. That was kind of his responsibility to have all that set up. And they set most of it up, in the shop. And, IMSA gives you, I think, an Ethernet line and, other things for the timing. So they try to make it as easy for the teams as they can. But yeah, there's a lot of wires and everything else in there. A lot of things to pay attention to. And telemetry didn't always work. So, yeah, we did have some issues every once in a while. I think every team does.
It is
So,
electronics. It is
yeah,
a tough
yeah,
environment for anything and everybody in the same place.
right. Yeah. And you just deal with it. There's nothing you can, no sense getting too upset about it. You just deal with it, so.
You can cry all you want and moan about it, right? But you still got to deal with what you have, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah.
So perfect. Ray is as he mentioned, on precision driving analytics. Ray does, sells a number of different products, supports different products. But when he's working on the AIM side, he has a couple of services that he does, and he provides, data coaching, data instruction, and then a couple things he does that we've talked about in the past is he sets up user profiles and math channels and other things. If you have an interest in that and you'd like to talk with Ray about him providing you that service, his information is right here on this page. His email address and his phone number. I've talked to any number of folks that have gotten that and have been very, very pleased. And he sets it up on your computer for your stuff, gets it all set up and ready to go. So when you go to the track, you can run through a lot of the same stuff that he talks about here in a very organized way. So Ray, tell us a little bit more about what you do, and then we'll kind of close this one out.
Yeah, I mean, I think you summarized it pretty well, Roger. But yeah, I mean, if somebody wants me at the track, yeah, I could probably be there. Depends on my schedule, but just found out I'm going to be supporting SRO team a little bit. They're going to be running a Lamborghini GT3 car, so that'll be fun. Another car I get to learn. Already got the manual, so
Back to work, back to work.
yeah,
Great, good for you though. Good for you.
yeah, yeah.
I'm glad you're busy.
So,
Perfect. Again, I thank Ray for coming, and I thank all of you for guys for joining us, and some great questions there. I hope you got something out of that. We talk a lot of technical things here, but every once in a while we'll have uh, co-hosts that come on and guests that come on and talk about experiences, and this was one of those, and I really enjoyed it. So thanks, Ray, for the time putting us all together. Thanks everybody for joining us. I appreciate it, and thanks Matt for putting some links in the background there. As always, appreciate it, and we'll look forward to seeing you all at the next webinar. So thanks, Ray. Have a good evening back there. It's about probably getting a little bit late. Time to go, right?
yeah.
So thanks everybody for coming. I appreciate it. We'll see you on the next one. Talk to you guys
Yeah.
all soon.
All right. Bye, everyone. Thank you.